The information provided on Terminal Addiction Podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified provider with any questions you might have regarding medical or mental health condition. Never disregard professional advice or delay seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast. The views and opinions expressed by the guests, the hosts, are their own, and they do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organization or institutions. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we make no guarantee regarding the completeness, reliability, or applicability of the content discussed. Listening to this podcast does not establish provider-patient relationship. If you're experiencing a medical emergency or mental health crisis, please contact emergency services or crisis line immediately.
Welcome back to another episode of the Terminal Addiction Podcast. My name is Doug H.
And I'm Paul B.
How you doing, Paul?
You know what? I'm doing okay.
Good. We are coming to you guys. This is a second episode we recorded 4th of July weekend here at Paul's in the upper dog room, and still no dogs. Just want to throw that complaint out there.
Yeah, there's two downstairs, but I haven't seen any up here.
Any of the dogs can hear me. We'd like to have you upstairs.
I think they're afraid of the band.
Oh, yeah. Well, it is a scary band. The Grumpy Pants. Yeah. So we're back. We got some more stuff we want to talk with you guys about. But again, we just want to really thank you guys for listening in, tuning in.
1,000 episodes.
We need to get a drop button for that. But
1,000 downloads. 25 episodes.
25 episodes, 1,000 downloads. We just really appreciate everybody that has taken the time to listen to our podcast. And hopefully you guys are able to get something out of it. And maybe it's making your recovery journey or your life or your struggles a little bit easier out.
You know what else? We're almost at a year.
Yeah, we started throwing ideas around in like August last year.
And
I think we started recording in September. October. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so we've been doing this, and I enjoy it. I like coming over here, hanging out with Paul and his family and his dogs, and getting to talk with you guys about some stuff on the podcast is really good. There's some things that we get to talk about, here that we don't get to talk about at work or in meetings or necessarily with our just immediate recovery family.
And we're no longer considered novices. Now we're kind of intermediate, and we're not experts yet.
I still feel like a white belt. So
white belt. Yep.
So, no, we want to talk with you guys, and we wanted to thank you guys about listening in. We really appreciate all the kind words, all the support, and hopefully we've been able to help a little bit out there. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the things we want to talk today about is, we like to talk about stresses and all those sad things. We want to talk about some of the mitigation things we can do to make life better. We've talked in the past about going to hockey games. We've talked in the past about going to concerts. But, what are the different things that we do to keep ourselves sane, keep ourselves sober for another day?
And I think that was the ideal demographic when we started doing this podcast coming up on a year ago. That's crazy. Was who's our target audience? And we were talking about, the person with like 6 months to 2 years who maybe has been through treatment or maybe has just started off going in the rooms and is maybe, working on the steps, working on life, getting a little bit better, but getting to a point where it's like, then what? And so I know sometimes even clean and sober, life still throws us curveballs, and it's important to find ways to deal with that. And so we want to talk with you guys again about some of those coping tools that we found, some of those things that we keep in our toolboxes.
Well, and I want to kind of start with when I was drinking and using I was an expert at isolation. Mm-hmm. I spent a lot of times in hotel rooms by myself, and that's where I found my liquor bottle. And I'd come home on weekends, and I'd keep the liquor bottle in my car, but I'd still would keep in isolation. I'd live on the couch. And breaking away from that. So what do I do instead nowadays? I have a group that we're going to be restarting it here soon, but just walking and talking, getting together with other people and just getting those feelings and those thoughts out of my head.
Yeah, because I think of myself as kind of an outgoing introvert. I need time to be alone, be home. I spend a lot of time, around people, and sometimes I need to recharge my batteries. But if I spend too much alone time with myself, I start coming up with some weird ideas. And there's a dog.
There's a dog.
Awesome. So I got to remember to, even if I don't want to do something, I remember somebody saying the only times you have to go to a meeting are 2 times: if you want to and if you don't want to.
Yeah.
And that made a lot of sense to me. And even when I'm not feeling like peeling myself out of my recliner or getting away from the TV, I go do those things because I know I'm going to feel better afterwards.
And let's face it, there are times that you can't help but be by yourself. But I know when I'm by myself, I have to keep busy, whether it's reading a book or watching the newest dystopian sci-fi thing on TV, or I love to learn. I will have either a documentary on, or I'll have a book in front of me trying to learn something new. I'm trying to learn new languages all the time, and just not sitting, because that's what's going to lead to me trying to, having those cravings and starting to pick up again.
Yeah, and I think for some people, I know myself still, I can get in the bed rot, where I just don't want to get out of bed, where I just want to stay inside. I don't want to see people. I don't want to feel, outside air. And I know that that's just not a good place for me to be. So sometimes I just get up and go do something, go to the gym, go to a meeting, go to the store, just go for a walk, just do something. Because for me, doing nothing is not productive, like it used to be for me. So, finding these people that you can be with, spend time with, I think is really important. I still like to go down and visit my family as often as I can. So that's important to me. But yeah, hockey games, not now because it's July, but concerts, baseball games, hockey games, art galleries, museums, just trying new things, I think is important. And trying new things with people, I think is important, because it's not necessarily the thing that we go do that is the memory. It's the time that we spend together, the things that we see and experience, and we can laugh and joke about those kinds of things. So I think doing those things with other people is important, but I do know that there is that tendency to isolate and want to be alone. But I know for me, that's not a great place for me to be very long.
Yeah, I've rediscovered traveling. When I was a young teenager, I would travel a lot. I traveled by myself as a 15, 16-year-old all over the world. And being able to do that again, and now that I'm in my 60s, I will plan a trip. And part of the enjoyment I get out of it is the months that I spend trying to plan all those little details for that trip, the excursions, what cities do I want to go to? What do I want to do when I get to those cities? And then when I finally get there with the family, then, we enjoy ourselves. We know what we can expect. Nowadays with YouTube and the internet, we have resources where we can see what it's going to be like every minute of that trip, really.
That's very cool. Yeah. And I like to give myself, I just call them fun things. I like to give myself fun things to do, at least once a month, sometimes twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a month, depending on what's going on, what time of year it is. And I like to do that because I know I have these things to look forward to. And I got these things to look forward to. So doing whatever I have to do in the meantime to get there makes doing those things I have to do maybe more pleasurable, more fun, easier to do, because I know I got these cool things that I got coming up. And then after I do the fun thing, I can ride off of that for a couple days, couple weeks until the next thing comes around. But it doesn't have to be anything that costs a lot of money. I got a pass to the Arboretum here. Mm-hmm. You can go to the Y. You can go out and just play basketball. I can go catch, less expensive concerts, and I can usually find hockey tickets, the day before for $20, $25, $30.
Right.
And so for me, it's just the doing things. Cause I know if I get up and go do something, I'm going to enjoy myself and I'm going to be glad I did it. If I stay home and just watch the same episodes of the same show over and over and over again, I know where that leads me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, I've done so much vacation planning up for myself that I get friends that come over all the time to see what can I do to help them with their vacation? Maybe it's someplace that I've been before. I had a friend come over not too long ago. She knew that I had been to Alaska, and she's like, okay, what kind of tips can you give me on going to Alaska? And I'm like, I'm good at this. I spent 2 years planning my Alaskan trip. So, she spent a few hours and we talked about, okay, here's what you got to do. Here's what you got to do, but stay away from that. And, I find a lot of enjoyment in just helping other people, plan their vacations as well. I kind of live, through them, as they go on their vacation as well.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really like when I'm doing meetings or when I'm hanging out with people is maybe the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting. Anybody that goes to, 12-step AA, NA meetings kind of knows what I'm talking about. And sometimes, the 15, 20, 30 minutes before or after or both, 15, 20, 30 minutes before or after a meeting actually is more fulfilling than going to the meeting itself. Not that I've ever been to a bad meeting, but a lot of times it is just hanging out with people before and after and hearing what they've been up to and what they've got coming up. For me, I like to trade music with people. I like to introduce people to music that they don't know, and I like to learn from other people stuff that I don't know. So sometimes those fellowshipping time frames are really, really good. And you get to hear what people are up to and where they're going, what they've been doing. They're gardening in the summer, or if they've been out somewhere cool. And so it's important for me to just stay around people because, as an outgoing introvert, I got to remember to be outgoing sometimes.
It's amazing that some of the people you meet. I mean, I've talked to before about some of the people that I met on some of the vacations that I've been at. Every cruise ship I get on, there's always an AA meeting, and we'll sit and talk. They're more or less AA and NA meetings combined because there's no organization like it would be an AA meeting. But the people that I met there, I was at a meeting just yesterday, and this guy and I are talking, and before the meeting, and he mentions that he lives in this neighborhood. Well, it turns out it's my neighborhood. Matter of fact, I can see his house from the studio window here.
That's cool.
So, yeah, the things that we learn about people, back when I was using, I didn't talk to anybody. I was worried about me. I was, worried about where's that bottle of vodka sitting. And today I actually enjoy really talking to people. I do it professionally as well as, in my everyday life, just sitting, talking to people. It's a whole new outlook on life.
And I think the longer that I've been clean and sober, and the more things I've done, the more people I meet that are just sober or in recovery or don't drink or use. And so that's really cool. I remember I was at a ZZ Top concert and I was standing in the merch line, and the guy in front of me, I didn't see the front of his shirt, but the back of his shirt just said Rule 62, which in AA is don't take yourself too damn seriously. Yeah. And so I kind of tapped the guy on the shoulder, and he turned around. It had a big AA logo on the front. And so we got to talking just in the merch line there. A lot of the concerts I go to fall into the jam band world. And a lot of the jam bands have sober, representation there. There's oftentimes there's a table, like a folding table with a yellow tablecloth, maybe some yellow balloons. And so you go up and there's just other sober people hanging out, and you can trade stories about shows you've been to. You can talk about sobriety, recovery. Maybe you're in town or out of town from a different area. So just getting to go and be around some other sober, like-minded people who like to engage in the same things you do. That's super cool for me to be able to do that, especially in the jam band world. Because I think a lot of people, combine, drug use and the jam band world, but to know that there's just this whole area. Excuse me, a fly just flew in front of my face, almost ate it. To know that there's just this area that I can go where there's other sober people. Sometimes they'll do like a meeting at half or at a intermission, before and after the meeting. It's just cool to go up and talk to people and trade stories about sobriety, recovery, and music and stuff. So,
well, speaking of ZZ Top, we saw them in a concert in Cincinnati, which is about 100 and some miles from here, and I saw you there.
I saw you there too, Paul. Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of ironic because we didn't go together, but we did see each other at the concert, and it was kind of cool. So, but I was on a cruise ship one day, and I'm sitting on the elevator, and I would always introduce myself when I got on an elevator and talk to whoever was on there with me for that 20 seconds that we're together. And I met this guy, and he was from the same town that I was born in New Jersey. And later on that day, I go to the AA meeting, and guess who's there? This guy from New Jersey, from the same town that I was born in. So, you get to meet some really interesting people. Of the 2,500 people on that cruise ship, what are the chances that I'm going to talk to the same guy on an elevator that I see at an AA meeting? So, there are these connections that we make through the program.
And I think, just like when I was drinking and using, you could drop me off in a city, in a town where I had no connections, and I would find the liquor, I would find the drugs, I would find the bar, because that's just the way that my energy was getting put out to the universe. But now, I'm putting out a different vibe, and I'm attracting different people. When I was out drinking and using, I was attracting other people that were sick and broken just like I was. Now that I'm, finding my way into recovery, I'm finding other people who are clean and sober, who are on a different path. And it's just really cool, because I do believe that the universe or God or the spirit or whatever puts people in our lives for a reason. And when I was drinking and using, I was very unclear what that was, but I can see that there's less coincidence now that I'm looking at life through a different pair of glasses.
Yeah, absolutely. I teach for a living, and I'm a registered nurse, but I teach for a living. And the number of times that I've had students come in and they'll talk to me after class, and they'll say, you know what, I think I might have this problem. What do you think? And, over the 5-6 years that I've been teaching at this location, it happens over and over again. Somebody will say, hey, what can you do to help me? And the company's good about providing those employee assistance programs and things, but nobody knows how to reach out to get those things. And just me being open and honest about, hey, I'm a recovering addict, I think makes a big difference.
Yeah, I remember hearing, from some old timers, they said you never know when you're going to be the only big book that someone ever sees. And I don't think I understood what that meant early on, but because now I've worked through the steps multiple times, and I feel like I have integrated, the recovery lifestyle into my life. I'm just out there living a different life with this recovery and this sobriety, and people take note of that. I've had many people reach out to me through Facebook or Instagram, or just pull me aside, and they go, just something seems different, and they can't put their finger on it because they don't know what I've been through. But then I'm open and honest about it, and I tell people my stories, bits and pieces at a time, and sometimes they're just looking for somebody like us who are stable and comfortable in their sobriety and their recovery, for them to talk to about this stuff, whether it's for themselves or for a friend or a family member. But that's what it means to be the big book that somebody might see. Is I'm living this program and this recovery lifestyle, and people take note of that, and people look at us as a source of hope and a source of something different, some change that could occur in either their lives, or hopefully some change that can occur in their friends and family's lives. So I really enjoy that. I think at first I was a little leery about, well, what do I tell people, or how do I self-disclose? And anymore, it's just part of who I am. It's not my complete identity, but it's a big part of who I am and what I do. And people take note of that. And it's really cool to have those honest, open conversations with people, whether it's like through online or through work or just through personal lives. You just never know whose life you're going to touch if you're just out there, being around people. We both see people that are coming into the program, and it's very, very common. I've had people say, look, I don't want anyone in the community ever finding out that I'm in the program. And, the stigma behind that, I think, is resolving in a lot of ways. The number of people that I've seen over the last 5 years has dwindled down to, most people are very honest about that and open about it. And the few people that I knew that wanted to keep it secret didn't do so well, later on in their sobriety. Very anecdotal, I get it. But I think one of the things that's helped a lot is that we have so many celebrities that are willing to say, look, I've got two months sober or 3 years sober.
And the number of people admitting that is growing by the day. You know, you see them and you go, wow, I didn't know that they were sober and you know, they've got less sobriety than I do. Wow. You know? So, yeah,
it is very cool seeing, athletes, musicians, actors, people like that, come out and be honest about their struggles, but also about their new path that they found. And I think it's really cool because there's a whole generation out there that's coming up, that's not drinking like we drank, and they're not using like we used. And whether it's just something in the culture or society that's shifting, or whether it's just people are growing up and they're seeing their older siblings or their parents or grandparents go through the things that, addicts and alcoholics have to go through. And it's just, it's changing their mindset, as they're coming up, and they're just not, getting involved in the same things we did. So I think that's great. I know we've had some guests on here that are out there, Bob specifically, and having people who are not afraid to just talk about their story. I'm not telling people what they have to do or what they should do or what they got to do. I'm just telling you what I did. I'm just telling you what worked for me. And if you want to try something in your life that might, put you in a different path, I'm super supportive of that. So whether it's, AA or NA or treatment or church or Celebrate Recovery or Smart Recovery or any of these things, I just want people to find their way, back to shore. And it feels like there's a lot more avenues and a lot more paths, that people are taking these days. And I'm supportive of all of that.
Yeah. And we've had guests on here from some of the different recovery programs as well. Recovery Dharma being one of them. And, the things that I learned that they do differently than, I come from a traditional AA background. The things that they do differently can really make an impact for some people, because no one program, no one meeting is for everybody. This podcast isn't going to be for everybody either. And we knew that coming up. When I first sat down with Doug talking about this concept, I said, who are we aiming towards? And, the initial gut thought was, well, everybody. And I'm like, no, we're not aimed at everybody. We need to kind of pick that one person that we can touch the most. And that's a demographic, not a specific person, but a demographic that we're going to touch the most. And, that's the way we've developed this podcast. And, meetings are the same way. I can go to one meeting and it's going to be old timers that have been sober for 30 years and they don't want to hear from the newcomers. And then the next meeting you go to, and it's going to be mostly newcomers, and every once in a while we'll have a sprinkling of some old timers in there to help keep things in line. And that's, it's okay for all the meetings to be different. I've been to meetings in Weaverville, North Carolina, that was completely different from a meeting that I attend here in Newark, Ohio. Which is completely different from one that I attended in Miami, Florida. And each one of those meetings just had its own dynamic, had its own audience. And I've even been to ones in the same town that just weren't the same. So finding your right one is really important.
Yeah. And I, back to the anonymity, anonymousness, I had no problem when people knew that I was an active alcoholic and an active drug addict. I was out running around causing 3 kinds of chaos, and I didn't seem to care then. So, but the idea of getting clean and sober, now we have to clean up that mess. And I think for a lot of people, that's where that desire to maybe stay in the shadows comes from. But in my experience, the more open and honest you are with yourself and other people, the easier this path is, this recovery journey. And there's just, if somebody's got something that works for them, I'm willing to sit down and listen and give it a shot. I've been to AA meetings, NA meetings, Celebrate Recovery, Smart meetings. I was actually talking to a guy about looking into some like overeaters or people who have trouble with healthy relationships with food. Looking into that, because there's all these other areas in our lives where once we quit drinking and using, all these other areas, our disease is still active and present, and it can show up in all these different contexts in different areas of our lives. And so just keeping an open mind and just always looking for something new to add to my repertoire is always, it's a fun journey for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Little story. I don't know that you know this. So back in 1983, I was a senior in high school, and my wife now, and I, we decided we were going to stop drinking. And so my senior year in high school and first couple of years of college, I didn't drink. And I remember in 1983, my English teacher in school, she came up to me and she said, I hear you're a teetotaler. And I said, no, I'm not. And she said, no, I hear you're not drinking anymore. And I said, no, that's not right. And, there was actual stigma about it. Part of it was being back in the 80s, but part of it was, my peers were still drinking and I didn't want to be associated with not drinking. And, 45 years later, I think back on that episode and I think, I wish I would have been honest about it then. And today I can be.
Yeah, I think for me, this is the longest I've ever been clean and sober, a little over 6 years now. But I've had some other periods of sobriety, and one of them was when I was like 21 after I got my third DUI. 21 to 24, it was about 2.5 years. But I think I still had a lot of that stigma, that guilt, that shame. 21, 22, 23, 24, that's when all my friends are out drinking and using and partying. And I think I tried to be around it too much, which was working against any sobriety or recovery that I was pursuing. I wasn't as active in any sort of recovery program. I didn't have as much of an open mind about things. I think I still had a lot of reservations and I was still holding on to a lot that I needed to let go of. So I didn't get involved the way I should have. And I ended up drinking again, and being back out for a few more years after that. But so for me, it was this idea that I wanted, I wanted to keep living the old lifestyle. I still wanted to hang out with the old friends. And I think it goes back to fear. I think I was afraid to try something new and different because I didn't know what it was going to look like. I knew what drinking and using looked like, and I wasn't drinking and using, but I wasn't ready to give up that lifestyle. And for me, it's just as dangerous to be in the lifestyle as it is to be drinking and using.
Well, we really appreciate the time you spent with us for the last, half hour or so. And, this is 4th of July weekend for us here. It's going to be late August for you guys when you hear this. But hang in there. It all works. Talking to people and just kind of summarize. Just talking to people and staying out of that isolation really, really works in trying to stay sober for another day. And then don't make your goal to never drink again. Make your goal to just make it through today, and then tomorrow will take care of itself. Yeah,
that's a great way to look at it. And if you or anybody you know is struggling with drinking or drugging, or anything else for that matter, talk to them. There are resources available out there. Everything's got a website these days. Google, we're not sponsored by Google, but Google is a great recovery resource. I think it can tell you where meetings are. It can point you towards treatment options, and it can give you just some ideas on ways to deal with this stuff. So if you or anybody you know is struggling with this, please try to help them as much as we can, and reach out to Paul or I. We're pretty easy to get a hold of through the podcast. You can always leave us a comment, and we read those, and we're happy to talk about anything on here that you guys want to hear about, or if you guys just have questions, we're happy to talk with you as well. So thank you again for over 1,000 downloads now through our first 25, 27 episodes, something like that. We really appreciate everybody taking time to give this a listen. So thank you guys very much.
All right. Thank you very much. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organization. This content is for informational purposes only and is not intended for professional advice. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Until next time.